Todd, you remember Stefan from last year?
Absolutely.
Evan is, Evan, you're new to the committee this year, right?
New to the subcommittee, yes.
Yes. Sorry, the
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
God.
So if you want to just do a quick introduction, and Todd will do the same.
Evan Kenny, you've been here since October 2018. I was on the school committee in Wakefield, and I have some background in municipal administration. So I think that's how I got this job. I defer to the chairman here on IT stuff, but I'm looking forward to working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been here. I was originally a consultant here in 2011, set up their virtual environment and their phone system, and then came on full time in about 2012.
Very good.
And just by way of a little bit further background, I don't know if you heard this or remembered, Evan, but there was a time when the town and the school systems were kind of at loggerheads, specific, in a lot of ways, but IT was one of those things.
Yeah.
Okay. And Todd has just done a terrific job of helping both sides, see the beauty of the other, and row in the same direction, I guess, is the way to put it. So it's been a real, like, this used to be a hot button topic every year, and it has since become much, much less so. And I thank Todd for that, for sure.
Very good.
Okay, so Todd, you want to go ahead and talk us through?
Sure. Not many changes this year in the budget. Just we're trying to stay lean, especially given the uncertainty of what we're going to have coming in for taxes and fees this year. But overall, we're down slightly. We had two major things, if you want to even call them major. We're no longer using C-Click Fix. I don't know if you guys knew of that app that we had.
I saw your note and I was curious about it. Is that the thing for the DPW where people would see a pothole and bring it to the attention of the DPW, or is it something else?
Yeah, exactly. So you could take a picture and submit it, and it would go into the DPW, and then they would put it in the work order system. Just usage was incredibly low, maybe 24 calls last year. Not maybe, it was actually 24 tickets that came in last year from it. So if we do the math on that, it's pretty expensive per incident. And I guess it was mostly 3 people that were using it.
What did it come to per incident?
About $220.
Yeah.
So we really couldn't justify keeping that.
That makes sense.
Do you know, was there an issue with, I guess, marketing on that? Because to be honest, I wasn't aware that we had that capability.
Yeah, we had it for, I want to say 5 years now. So originally the state had an agreement with this company, and municipalities that signed up got it free for 3 years. And it just really never took off. At the time, we didn't have a full-time communications manager. And I guess there wasn't a lot of internal adoption. But once it was out there on the website and available, I don't know, I guess people just didn't pick up on it.
I think, Stefan, to your point, it could definitely be an issue where there just wasn't enough awareness of,
right,
hey, this is something you can do. But there it is. All right, so that was one.
Yeah, the only other major change would be our TeamViewer subscription. Basically just reduce the services in that, and that's only a couple thousand. We just weren't utilizing the ability to provide remote support for phones. There wasn't a high demand for that.
Funny, because that's an app that my company used to use, and and I had to remove it from my startup group because it would open up every day. And as far as I know, I don't use it. And now they don't use it either, whether they know it or not.
Oh, yeah. Well, they
All right,
don't use it
so
for
those
Europe.
exactly. So those are two things that have gone down, and overall, the overall ask is down almost 1%, basically, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna bring up your spreadsheet.
And are you going to share your screen?
Oh, we can, yeah.
I could share mine if you prefer.
Yeah, if you want to bring that up, that's fine too. That works.
All right. That's not what I want. PowerPoint, Firefox, where's my Excel?
Oh, Todd, I had one question about the, at the very bottom, the less school transfer
Yeah.
line. Are the costs associated with that transfer built into this budget?
Yeah, so
Or is that
in the past, we
school side?
haven't increased the chargeback to the schools. And that's probably been for the past, maybe since 2008, since before my time. So it's cost of just salaries alone have been going up every year. It's just been diminishing. So we've increased that by 3%.
Okay, is it I guess a one-to-one? All of the costs that the school assumes in their budget is transferred over to here? Is that how, maybe that's not a correct way of explaining that, but.
I guess they would have to account for that in their budget. Yeah. So overall, it's still an increase for the town.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Stefan, and I can't figure out how to just share my Excel. So if you want to share, Todd, please do.
Sure.
Stefan, are you asking, because I was trying to look for my Excel, are you asking whether the salaries that we see in this budget are shared between the schools and the town? Or did I miss that?
Yeah, so I guess that's a better way of putting it. I guess all of the IT salaries that are listed in the personnel services breakdown, are those salaries the ones that are shared between, I guess, town and school?
Yeah, everyone in our department does some kind of support for the schools.
And so then, Stefan, your question is, how is that accounted for?
Yeah, so I'm just going to do just a quick sum of salaries. So the so the total salaries for FY21 was about 550K. And the school's portion of that would be what about 25% of that? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
About 33%.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could I just, as I really haven't dug into this budget before, and Stefan's piquing my curiosity here. So these two offsets from the school transfer, I understand, at least conceptually. Where is the enterprise fund? Which enterprise fund?
Yeah, so the enterprise fund, that is a mix of the gas and light department and the water department.
Okay. So you try to divvy it up proportionally, right?
Right.
That's always fun.
Yeah, so those proportions, it's 27% for the school and 37% for the enterprise fund.
Okay. Yeah, they had some formula way back.
Yeah, just because of things have changed this past year so drastically, I'm just curious if those, I guess, proportions still align well.
I guess we haven't done.
And I'm just sorry to recap. Your question essentially is, we're charging these other entities a certain percentage of the time of the folks in the IT department. Do those map to the actual amount of time that they're spending on those other departments? Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so we don't track it just by time. Part of that enterprise fund is also the infrastructure that we have. So I guess it's, well, the maintenance of that infrastructure. So not necessarily by hours, but the ability to maintain that switching infrastructure, the fiber network.
Okay, that includes some of the licenses as well.
No, licenses would be covered under like software maintenance or.
Okay, but I guess, does the school benefit from any of those particular licenses?
No, so the school will have their own licenses for things like their Windows Server infrastructure, any applications that they use. What we do maintain is the phone system licensing. We have, there aren't really licenses that we have on our Cisco devices that don't come out of capital. So when we buy a Cisco device, the license is included with that.
And what you're getting at, Stefan, is it appears that schools and enterprise are only paying a percentage of salaries and not other hardware, infrastructure, wires, that sort of thing. And is that right?
Yeah, I guess it's I've seen a number of these budgets. Like last week, there were some budgets that had these transfer lines at the bottom. But unfortunately, these transfers, they don't have the background detail as to what the transfers actually encompass.
Are for.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's difficult because we see this budget and we're like, oh, this budget's fine. It's pretty much in line. But then, the school budget's dealt with separately, and there's never that married between the two, which could potentially impact what our IT budget is here.
So meaning like they don't have a specific line item as earmarked for a transfer in their budget?
No, I think they would. There would be that connection at least. Evan, you might know better from the school side than I do, but no, I guess all the details that are behind that transfer, like how did they get to 147? What did that?
Yeah, so that's a question that goes back to when they first converged all the networks of the schools. I think Dave had some formula that they based it upon first the number of network ports that they were activating. And it ended up being that nobody ever really knew the calculation between, like even today, myself, Jeff Weiner over there. We just know that was the number that was originally established, and everyone's been happy with the service, so we've stuck with it. Instead of, they've grown quite a bit since then, but we haven't increased based on like port count because it's kind of, I don't know how they came up with that formula to begin with.
I will say this conversation, it's a little more complicated here when you're talking about enterprise funds and stuff. But in my years in the school committee, there was always every year this like, to me, what seemed like a really silly peeing contest between which general fund revenues are going to be directly transferred to the schools, and so like to me, and there's something here too. There's an element to this too here, Todd. Not that we're behaving the same way in discussing it, but to me, it's just like on some level, it's a fungibility issue. Like at some point, it's all coming from the same pot. It's either taxation by traditional taxation, or it's, taxation by fees. And so, I'm personally not going to stress too much over how much the proportions line up here. Like, at some point it all offsets, but and I'm sure you have to have this kind of conversation every year, Todd, but and other departments do too. But like at some point there's a fungibility issue, I think. And it's not an issue, is my point, I guess.
It's funny, it reminds me of a joke my mother used to tell about how mother and daughter are cooking a turkey. Mother cuts off the ends of the turkey and puts it in the oven. And at some point the daughter asks, why do you do that? And she says, gosh, I don't know. We've always done it this way. Call grandmother, and grandmother says, oh my God, we used to have a really small oven.
This is pretty good.
All right. So in terms of that apportionment of salary to schools and enterprise, it seems like then other aspects, that are more specific to the schools just pay for directly. And I'm sure the enterprise folks have their own IT costs that we don't necessarily see, but they're licensing and whatever else they do.
Yeah, so like enterprise departments they'll ask us to order hardware, but they'll get the invoices for it.
Sure. We want the people who know about this stuff to buy the right stuff for us, but then we'll take care of it from there. Or you'll probably even do the install and configuration because that's your portion of that makes sense. Okay, other questions about that apportionment?
I'm good.
All right, so Todd, I noticed that, it's always interesting to me to look at the percent of the 2021 budget that had been spent as of, the middle of the year.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if I added my column before I sent out my updated spreadsheet to you guys. But like there are some budgets, materials and supplies, it's a relatively small budget, but only 17% of it has been spent thus far this year.
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about those budgets? It didn't seem like as I was quickly looking through it, it didn't seem like there were any budgets that had already spent 100% of their 2021 budget.
Yeah, with all of them, we only try and spend them when we absolutely need them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these are front loaded where we'll have like some maintenance agreements come up that they're due July and August. Some of them, the subscriptions or maintenance, they might be due in May. With the other items like computer supplies, some of those are there they're there as a backup if we have a computer that's out of warranty or system that might need a part replaced. We have a small budget to go and buy a hard drive or whatever the case may be. The same thing, some of that stuff just could be computer paper, printer paper, things like that.
Sure. So there's no like percentage spent of last year's budget essentially thus far. There's nothing that really stands out or is alarming to you at this point.
Not to me. I always just manage them as I really don't even look at the percentages. I check the invoices when they come in. I'm not worried about having to spend it down or anything like that. We just give it back when the end of the year comes.
Right. We had a conversation about that in our last get together. And Stefan, I actually think it was a question you had asked about, or somebody had asked, I can't remember now, if we've got this once every 5 years budgeted, we should maybe budget for it rather than pull it out of free cash or whatever. And it turned into a conversation about, in many state government, town government places where they don't have the kind of understanding maybe or feeling about how they spend their money, at the end of the year, departments are out spending money on all kinds of stuff so that they don't don't have their budgets reduced in next year's budget because they didn't spend all the money that they were allocated this year. And it seems like that sort of culture is not here, which I think is a great thing.
Yes.
You know, be an adult, be a grown up, and, you know, say how much you think you need. And if you don't need it, then we'll put it back in the budget and we can always revisit it. But, you know, I think that's a much more economically, this makes sense kind of way to do things, for sure.
Yeah, and if the opposite happened, if some emergency came up and we actually needed to go and ask for more money, I think there are reserve funds that they can transfer from with approval. We haven't gotten to that situation yet, so hopefully we never have to, but I don't think there's any need to really buffer things like at a crazy amount.
Yeah, and I think there's ample evidence that you've been a pretty good steward of the budget, especially if you've been returning money year over year. You know, that's something easily that you could point to get a general fund transfer.
So in terms of page 2, the that's weird, or not page 2, the one software maintenance. I remember we spent a lot of time on that last year, and we were particularly concerned about where the Munis support was headed.
Yeah.
And it seems like that has become less of an issue, right? It was up around almost 13% from 20 to 21 in the 2021 budget, or as we looked at the difference from 20 to 21. But that seems to now it's 3% apparently for this year. Is that what you have?
Yeah, we put it in at 3% this year. 20 to 21, 13%.
There was an additional line for that for human resources and
That's
talent
why.
management that was
I was gonna say that seemed kind of high. That's right. Human resources came in last year.
And so that gave us what looked like a line that was dramatically headed up.
Right.
Interesting. All right. So about software, you know, can you give us an overview of anything that's gone on or has been problematic or anything like that?
Yeah, as far as nothing really problematic. The only big changes that we had, like I said, we were just removing C-Click Fix. We're in our second year with OpenGov for the online permitting. So that one, percentage-wise, it's not, you know, it's not a big increase now. Acrobat, we're just going to use perpetual licenses. So that would eventually come out of capital the next time we have to upgrade those versions.
Mm-hmm.
Is really looking down the list again. Yeah, really nothing major here. I don't know unless anyone had any particular questions.
I'm looking for a sanity check. I thought I remembered because I'm looking at the subtotal here, the Munis products at 84 grand. I thought I recalled in the last year or two, we spent like a big time, like a much bigger number on upgrading the entire Munis system townwide. Am I nuts or did that happen? Like I thought I remember approving like some sort of 6-figure, almost like one-time software upgrade type of thing. Did that happen or am I absolutely nuts?
No, that might have been a while ago.
Okay.
We've done upgrades, but we have one of our employees is a Munis engineer, basically like a Munis support person.
Well, that's great.
And he manages all the upgrades now.
All right, I guess I'm nuts. I thought I remembered a big number. I'm confusing it with something else because it was while I was on the committee, and I've been on the committee for for only 2 years. So,
No, nothing in the last 6 years, I'd say.
okay.
There was definitely, maybe it was a training thing, or we had to buy consulting from Munis to do things. And then we realized that what they were doing for us, we could do internally. And so then we stopped purchasing whatever that service was, something like that.
Nothing to that magnitude though, of 6 figures.
No.
Yeah, I must be mixing it up with a different, I thought I remember free cash appropriation.
Could you be referring to, was it Wi-Fi that we had outfitted for the schools?
It could be, I could be mixing it up with some sort of infrastructure upgrade.
We did Wi-Fi last year, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's what I don't know why I connected that with Munis, but, all right, well, thanks.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the Wi-Fi issue from last year?
Sure. So the schools had AeroHive access points. Shortly after we invested in AeroHive, they switched their licensing model, where it used to be heavy upfront with the hardware, but the licenses were cheap. And then they switched thereafter to they lower the price of the capital investment in hardware, but your recurring fees were much higher. So we kind of got in at the wrong time, not knowing about it. I say at the wrong time, but we went a few years. So with this last round of access points, we were looking at renewals of the software subscription. At the same time, we were looking at the age of the APs, and it made sense to upgrade at that point. So Jeff did a bunch of research. He went with Ruckus, and that was the install that we did last year.
Terrific. Okay. So we're half an hour in, and I gave us an hour and a half. I'm not sure we need all that, but I'd like to see if the committee members have any questions, about IT generally, or specific things that you know about and want to understand how we do it here, or anything like that. And I know I want to talk about IT security. But before we get into that, do you guys have anything?
Todd, I'll just ask real quickly, because I tried to mention this to Steve a few weeks ago, and the name of the software totally escaped me at the time. Do you have anything to do with Code Red?
No.
That's all emergency management? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
It seems like, well, first of all, what is Code Red?
It's the emergency, like, reverse 911 system. You get the robocall to your house that says no emergency or whatever. There's one that I've experienced with both Code Red, and we had switched away to Swift 911, which I thought was way better, and I think it was cheaper. But that's something I need to bring up with Tom, I think. Tom Walsh, right? Tom?
Yeah.
Emergency management, yeah.
I think in the past, Chief Sullivan managed that, but Tom would be a good resource too.
Yeah, I think he's managing it right now. Steve mentioned, the guy's working his tail off in these emergency times,
Yeah.
But I think Steve did tell me that he managed that for the most part. So I won't spend any of your time on that.
No worries.
The only other thing that I wanted to mention was any potential or forthcoming hardware buys for our servers, whatnot.
Yeah, so the servers we put in for a grant this past year, and there were too many applicants. We didn't get approved. So we're actually working that out right now. The schools want to refresh about $250,000 worth of projectors this year for the Galvin, and we're trying to figure out a way if we can either, well, one, if we need all of that right now, we just want to balance our capital requests across the years. So we need to do a server upgrade soon. They need projectors. We're going to see if either of us can push till next year, in which case we'll apply for the grant again too, and hopefully get something.
Okay, but the projectors, that'll be under the school budget, potentially?
Yeah, so the school technology, their capital comes in through a general request that goes in DPW. It's like all technology for the schools, my department, and the library. They come into DPW and get presented at the capital meetings, capital planning meetings.
I see. Okay.
So Jeff's been great to work with, where we're trying to just balance out the years so we don't flood the town with taking up 25% of their overall capital.
Right, and ostensibly, we didn't buy everything at once, and so therefore, you know, there should be like a rolling schedule for when we need new this or the new that.
Right.
And how much was that grant for, that grant application for?
The grant application was for 151,000, and we were going to contribute roughly 64,000.
Okay, and that's just to do all of them all at once?
That was to do public safety and our main data center to switch to a hyper-converged model. So it'd be all of the town servers, the ones that host the enterprise servers. And then we would plan on, within the next 2 years, upgrading the school infrastructure to school servers.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay. Evan, anything else?
I'm good.
All right, so I don't know if you all have ever heard of the Center for Internet Security, but it's an interesting story. They started out as an attempt within the federal government to share the information that the NSA and other highly technical branches had around how to protect their assets against cyber attacks, et cetera, with other less technical branches of the government. And so the 20 critical security controls is their updated every year list of how to prioritize your IT security efforts and spend to be most effective. And so as an example, the first control is you have to know what's on your network, because you can't protect something if you don't even know it's there. And it's, we had a customer based in Framingham who was famously hacked several years ago, a large retail company. And we were called into their offices the week after the news hit that they had been hacked. And so we asked them to tell us which machines were part of their retail, they carried credit card numbers. And 2.5 months later, they still couldn't tell us. Like, they had no idea. And they're not alone. They're, with the ability to spin up servers in cloud environments or virtualized servers in seconds now, it's a lot harder to keep track of all that stuff. And so having a way to know what's up in your environment is really important. So that the first control is know what's on your network. Second control is know what software is running on your network, so that third control, you can do vulnerability management. And vulnerability management is basically there's some version of software that's installed that has holes in it, and there are known ways to take advantage of those holes to get access to your systems. And so therefore, typically you need to upgrade the software to a version that's been patched for that particular vulnerability. And of course, there are new vulnerabilities that get added in. It's a constantly evolving process. The fourth control is identity and access management, which is keeping track of who has rights to what and making sure those rights make sense. And there's typically a concept of least privilege, which says, give this person the least amount of privilege they need to do their job so that they don't accidentally do something they shouldn't do, for example. And then the fifth control is understand what's changing on your network. That is, what's changing on your servers, your routers, your domain controllers, your backend databases. Make sure that those changes are appropriate and ensure that your systems are securely configured. And so, for example, the CIS publishes recommendations for how to securely configure a Windows 2016 box or a Red Hat 7 box. Turn this on, set this off, turn this to 42. Boom, boom, boom. There are hundreds of discrete settings that add up to this thing is securely configured or not. And then the sixth control is log and security event management. And then, as you go down through the list, there's email protections, there's border defense, there's penetration testing, there's all kinds of terrific controls, 20 of them, in fact. But what they say is do these 6 before you do the rest of them. And that is the most effective way to attack IT security in terms of solving problems at a basic level that most effectively protect you against all the stuff that comes downstream. And the idea is that if you were to talk to 10 CISOs and ask them how many of you all are doing penetration testing, I can pretty much guarantee you they're all doing penetration testing. And that's an important control, but it's number 20. And if you ask them, are you doing 1 through 19? I guarantee you they're not. And the idea is if you haven't done 1 through 19, if you just go straight to penetration testing, you're going to find all kinds of problems because you haven't done this stuff to get you to a position where penetration testing makes sense. So one of the things that I like about that is that it makes it clear where to start and the types of things that you need to do in order to be effective in terms of IT security. And I think we've all seen examples of hospitals, municipalities, companies that have been attacked and put into difficult situations because of ransomware, as an example, which is typically propagated through emails where people click on links they ought not click on. And that's more of an education thing. But the fact is that if you are securely configured and you got the right controls in place, then that becomes less of an issue. Stefan, you were going to take a look at the labs where you work to sort of maybe get an understanding of how you guys attack IT security and if you've got a process or a rubric or a standard that you go by. Have you had a chance to take a look at that?
Yeah, so of course, we had our meeting, I think, right around this time last year.
It was actually February of last year, yeah.
Yeah, and then COVID, of course, was creeping up, and that next month, the whole lab just went home.
Yeah.
So our IT folks.
Well, can I interrupt 1 second?
Sure.
Brian, I would suggest that for this portion, we stop recording if this is going to be posted.
That's a great point. Because we don't want to necessarily have anybody. So we're going into executive session is what we're doing.
Right.
Don't say that. We didn't post that.
I don't know that they're going to let me pause recording. Let me see if I can find it. Because I didn't start recording, like the meeting was set up to record. And when I click on the recording, there's a sort of a link in the upper right-hand corner that says recording. And I don't have any ability to right click on that or change it or.
On the bottom of mine, there's a record feature. Alt-R is a hotkey.
Oh, interesting. I got a Mac.
Oh no.
Oh, so it's Command Shift R.
Command Shift R. And it just beeps at me. Control Shift R did not just beep at me, but I don't see it doing anything. I know Sherry is actually responding. Let me see if I can quickly ask her about turning off the recording.
There's a record. I'm on an Apple too, Brian. There's a record option under your meeting tab up top left, where there should be.
Okay, enter full screen, keep on top, minimal view, mute audio, mute all, stop video, switch camera, start share, invite.
Oh, that's weird. Must be a permissions thing, huh?
Well, it could also just be, what is it? Problem exists between keyboard and chair.
I've never heard that one. I like it.
The irony is not lost to me that as we're about to enter a very sophisticated discussion about IT security, we can't figure out how to.
Gotta turn off the damn recording. Yeah, so let me just reach out to Sherry real quick on email and see if she's got a thing for me. I mean, so there's a thing up there showing me that it's recording, right? And typically I would be able to right click on that or do something to get it to stop, but it's not. It's not letting me do it. All right, so let me just reach out to her, Sherry.
We could also end this and I could send out a new invite if you want.
Oh, that's a good point. Why don't we just do that?
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we just do that?
Yep, I'll send one out.
Perfect. See you on the other side.